Hello, my people. Welcome to the second episode of My People, the podcast. Today, we are talking about boundaries. Hey, it's like one of my favorite topics, so I'm so glad to be talking about it and sharing it with you today. We're going to start with why we struggle with setting boundaries. Then we're going to talk about the most important boundary to have. And then lastly, we're going to talk about what it really means to enforce your boundaries. What does that actually look like? But first, I want to say thank you so much for coming again and for being here today and for trusting me enough with your time. And I want to also thank all of the wonderful feedback that I've gotten from the first episode. If you haven't seen the first episode of My People, the podcast, it is amazing, and I've gotten such great feedback about people feeling like it really speaks to them and it's really on brand and on target for the struggles of people pleasing. The first episode is 5 red flags that you are a people pleaser. If you haven't listened to it yet, please go back and check it out. I will link it in the show notes, and then come back. This podcast will be here. We're not going anywhere, and come back and join us for the boundaries. As I said in the first podcast, the first podcast episode, this whole point of this podcast is to support you on your people-pleasing recovery journey. So last week, I kind of hit you in the face with some red flags that were kind of like, and you're like, oh my gosh, all of these are me, now what? I totally get you. Like I said, I got you covered, don't worry. That's why we're here today. We're going to talk about boundaries. Boundaries are a way for us to move into recovery with our people pleasing. It's one of the strongest, biggest foundations when it comes to people pleasing and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves, respecting ourselves, and not taking on things that don't belong to us, like we talked about in the last episode. Our boundaries serve us, but they also serve those around us. So let's get into it. Why do we struggle with setting boundaries? Well, the first reason is because it's something new. You may have set boundaries in some area. I'm sure that you have. You know how to say no. You have said no before in the past. But there are some areas in your life that you have never set boundaries in. So it feels uncomfortable. It feels out of body. It feels in opposition to everything that you are and everything that who you are and everything that you know to be true. And so it feels uncomfortable, and that's normal. When we start new things, it's normal to have that learning curve and to be a little scared about doing something you've never done before. So that is why it happens, and you can help yourself feel comfortable in this is think about other ways in which you've had to try something new. I don't know why, but roller skating came to mind for me. Or you could think about riding a bike and how nerve-wracking it might be to first take those training wheels off, and how scary that might be to feel like, can I really keep my balance? And oh my gosh, I don't have the protection of my training wheels. In this case, it'd be the protection of my people-pleasing and doing what I've always done. And now I'm trying to do something new. So it's a completely normal to feel uncomfortable, to feel scared, to feel anxious, to feel all of these feelings in your body. All it's telling you is that you're doing something you've never done before. And the reason why we have those feelings is because our brains are really efficient, and our brains don't like change. It's kind of something that has evolved in what's kept us safe. If our brains identify something as being a danger, like a bear, that's what it's thinking of. It's comparing having boundaries with seeing a bear, which obviously isn't the same thing, but your brain is associating it the same. And so your brain is like, okay, we know bears are dangerous. Why would we all of a sudden want to start acting like bears aren't dangerous? That sounds crazy to me. So your brain is like, hold on, whoa, we've already put this in the scary don't do pile. Why are you trying to take it out? Again, your brain is focused on efficiency, and change isn't necessarily efficient. Your brain is like, this is what we've always done. Why would we change it? Like, this has worked for us. But another thing to really point out here is it has worked for you. In psychology, they call this adaptive versus maladaptive coping skills, which you can kind of see people pleasing as a a coping skill that at one time worked for you. Probably in your childhood, people pleasing kept you safe, kept you from bullies. It kept your parents from getting angry with you. Maybe it kept your parents from fighting. There's all these reasons why people pleasing, playing small, going with the flow, not speaking up, not being too loud has worked for you in the past. But now here you are in adulthood and you're trying to use those coping skills that you used when you were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and they're not working anymore. So at one time it was adaptive for you. Now it is maladaptive, which means that it no longer works. That same coping skills you have used that has gotten you through things now has become a detriment to you, and it is no longer serving you. So we have these maladaptive coping skills that our brain is like, this has always worked. I don't understand why it would stop working. I don't understand why you're trying to do something different. And this is why we have this angsty, uncomfortable, what the heck are you doing kind of feeling inside of us. And so it's really important to recognize that just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean it isn't good for you. Sometimes things can feel really bad and be the best things for us. Next, we are going to focus on the most important boundary to have. And I totally want to know what you think is the most important boundary to have. So like right now in the YouTube comments, type in there what you think the most important boundary is to have before I say it, because I think it's really interesting for us to think about, of all the boundaries to have, what is the most important. So I'm going to wait. Okay, you done typing? Okay, so the most important boundary to have is actually the boundary with ourselves. Who guessed that? Who said that? Was it you? Tell the truth. The most important boundary to have is actually with ourselves. And that might be surprising to hear me say that, because maybe you thought the most important boundary was to have between your spouse or your boss or your kids. Maybe you thought about the person who is driving you crazy the most in your life right now, and you're like, setting boundaries with them is the most important because it'll make my life so much easier. And that is true. Don't get me wrong. It is important to have those boundaries. They are very much so important. However, we can't have boundaries with others until we have boundaries with ourselves. And boundaries with ourselves look like discipline, commitment, follow through, parenting ourselves, holding ourselves accountable, being honest and vulnerable with ourselves, and really taking a moment to be like, okay, am I being true here? Am I really being honest about what I need in this moment? So boundaries with ourselves are the most important because we have to start with ourselves first. We have to start being real and honest with ourselves. We cannot expect others to treat us well until we start treating ourselves well. We cannot expect others to follow through with their commitments until we start following through with our commitments to ourselves. So what does that look like? A boundary with myself might be, I told myself that I was going to wake up at 7 a.m. to make sure that I have 30 minutes to myself before everyone else in the house wakes up. And that is a commitment that I have decided that I would have with myself because of all these different reasons, because it helps me with my mindset, and it helps me with clarity, and it helps me be focused for the day, and all these other kind of things. But I have to say, okay, Anna, you said you were going to be up at 7 a.m. to take care of yourself. You have to follow through with that commitment to yourself. So it could be a commitment that you made to yourself. It could be a boundary of saying, I have decided that at 8 p.m., everything gets shut off. I don't care if I still have work left to do. I don't care if dishes are still in the sink. I don't care what else is going on. I decided at 8 p.m. that is the time that the day shuts down for me, and it is time to start getting ready for bed or reading a book or having some quiet time or whatever else like that. So it can be systems and ways in which you have decided you are going to set boundaries with how late you work, how early you start working. It could be a boundary that you set with yourself in regards to who you allow in your life. I could say, I have decided that I will no longer engage with people who lie to me. And that is a boundary that I have decided for myself. And so I don't get to say, oh, well, they lie because they had a hard time, or, oh, they lie because, they don't mean to be mean. It's just something that they do. It just comes so natural to them and they just can't help it. We're not making excuses. I've decided I will not allow X type of person in my life, and I am going to stick to that boundary. There are no exceptions. Again, we have to set the tone with ourselves so that others can just get in line with the environment that we have already set up. We have already decided what we will allow in our environment, and now everyone else has an idea of what to get on board with. Now they have clarity around what you will allow in your life, what time you are available for this, what time you are not available for that, and so on and so forth. So those are the most important boundaries that we set, is the ones that are centered around ourselves. Lastly, what we are going to talk about today is what it means to actually enforce your boundaries. So you could have a boundary. Let's say you have a roommate who is eating your food. I don't know why I just thought of that. I guess because my daughter ate all my potato skins and I never got one, and that was rude. So say you set a boundary. Totally unrelated, but that's what came to my mind. But say you have this boundary of not allowing, your roommate is eating your food in the fridge, and you're like, you know what? I've had enough of this. We have this agreement where what I buy is mine and what you buy is yours. Like, what the heck is up? So when it comes to enforcing that boundary, obviously your roommate has already decided that they don't care. You guys already talked about it. He or she already knows they're not supposed to eat your food, and clearly they don't care. So would it make sense to put the enforcement, to put the standard of whether this boundary actually will exist and create change in your life? Does it make sense to put that responsibility on your roommate, who has clearly showed that they do not care about your wants, needs, and desires? They have decided that them eating those potato skins or whatever else it is more important to them than what you want and what you desired, and respecting that about you. Doesn't really make sense to put the ball in their court and to put the responsibility on them. And that is something that we as people pleasers do all the time. We'll set a boundary and we'll say, okay, I have decided that no one can call me after 9 p.m. I've decided I will not answer phone calls after 9 p.m. And so you decide to take a liberty upon yourself and let everyone in your life know, don't call me after 9 p.m. If you call me after 9 p.m., I'm not going to answer the phone. And just by saying that, you think, oh, okay, well, I just set a boundary and now no one's ever going to call me after 9 p.m. Sorry to disappoint you. Yes, they are. They're used to calling you after 9 p.m. They're going to keep calling you after 9 p.m. And so then someone calls you after 9 p.m. and what do? You pick up the phone and you say, hey, I said don't call me after 9 p.m. And they're like, oh, but it's really important. And I promised it'll be really quick. And I just need your help. And I just couldn't wait till tomorrow. It's just so important and so urgent. And so what do you say? Oh, okay. I guess just this once. And then next thing you know, you're on the phone till like 10:30 p.m. And whatever you had set up for yourself that was going to get accomplished after 9 p.m. is now no longer happening. And then you find yourself saying, okay, I set these boundaries and no one respects my boundaries, right? You're like, I set these boundaries. I'm doing my best. I'm trying not to be a people pleaser. I'm setting boundaries, but nobody's respecting them. What am I supposed to do? I totally get it. I've been there, done there. I thought all you needed to do was to set a boundary and then all of a sudden your life would be better and everything would be okay. Unfortunately, that is not the case, because people who have been used to taking advantage of you and used to you being a people pleaser are not just going to wake up one day and be like, oh, Anna set a boundary. I'm totally going to completely change my life and change everything I know about her to be true, and now all of a sudden respect that boundary. It's true there might be some people who do that. I'm not saying no one will, but it's really not about who does or who doesn't, because the sauce is in the fact that you are responsible for enforcing the boundaries. So let's try that same scenario again. You call up everybody, you say, I'm no longer accepting calls after 9 p.m. If you call me after 9 p.m., I'm not going to answer the phone. Now, this time, instead of just expecting everyone else to be like, okay, Anna, cool beans, I'll never call you after 9 p.m. Instead, you are going to turn off your notifications, put your phone on do not disturb, put it on airplane mode if you need to, if you have your kids in your house or whatever, and you don't need to answer the phone call after 9 p.m. There's no reason for it. I mean, disclaimer, if it's really emergency, how about you call 911? If you're bleeding, why are you calling me? So let's also make sure we are not allowing people to have emergencies that really have nothing to do with us, because I am not Superwoman. I don't know what you want me to do. Call 911 and I'll see you in the morning. Anyway, so if you're able to put your phone on airplane mode, whatever it is that you're able to do, that is you enforcing that boundary. And if you don't want to put your phone on airplane mode and you just want to turn the ringer off, that's totally fine too. And if you see that you got calls after 9 p.m., you don't answer them. You do whatever it is that you committed to yourself. Again, that boundary you set with yourself. You do whatever it is that you committed to yourself to do. And you do that. You engage in that. If the phone is ringing, the phone is ringing. That's none of your business. That has nothing to do with you. You already clearly communicated that you are not available after 9 p.m. End of discussion. There are no exceptions. Again, if you have an emergency, call 911. I am not a superhero. I cannot save you. So after 9 p.m., you are now unavailable. You do what you need to do. When you wake up in the next morning or the next day, and people are like, oh my gosh, I called you and it was so important and you weren't available. You say, yeah, I know. And you remind them and you say, remember I said I'm not available for calls after 9 p.m. How can I help you now? I'm available now. That's it. That's it. And it may take some time for people to get used to that, and they might be mad, and they might be angry, and they might have their feelings hurt. But again, that's a them problem. I love that song. That's a them problem. That's a them problem. They ain't got nothing to do with you. That's a them problem. That's a TikTok if you haven't heard it. And I love it so much. But anyway, that is a them problem, okay? You what on earth could they possibly need you for after 9 p.m. that can't wait until the next day? They might not feel like it can't wait till the next day because it's such an emergency to them. Again, that's not your business. They need to work on their own time management. They need to figure out why the heck they got so many emergencies happening after 9 p.m. What are you doing? What are you doing that can't wait till tomorrow? There's very few things that can't wait till tomorrow, and I can't think of a single one of them. So this is how we enforce our boundaries. It comes to us. It's up to us to enforce the boundaries. We have to shift from thinking that other people are just going to automatically respect our boundaries and engage in the way we'd like them to, into recognizing that it's up to us. It is our responsibility to enforce our boundaries. It is up to us to commit to ourselves. It is up to us to follow through and say, I said no. I said I'm not available. I'm not available. And I will address this tomorrow. You can send me an email that I'm not going to read right now because it's after 9 p.m. I will not read it until I've decided I'm available. Read it tomorrow. And then I will address your issue. All right. So we discussed why we struggle with boundaries, because it's not in our nature, or I shouldn't say it's not in our nature. It just doesn't come natural to us, and that's okay. We can learn new skills. We can learn how to make it natural to us. There is possibility for change. Just because you've been one way for a while does not mean you can't change and become a different way. Then we talked about what is the most important boundary to have, and that is the boundary with ourselves, which leads into having that boundary with ourselves helps us to enforce boundaries because it's up to us. We are the ones who have to make sure that our boundaries are upheld. It's not up to other people. That's on us. How they respond is on them. We have zero control of how someone responds to our boundaries. Again, we have to become okay with and acknowledge that, yes, this is going to make people mad. This is going to make people sad. Unfortunately, we may lose relationships, and then we are going to have to go through the grieving process of losing that relationship. And that's going to suck. But again, just because something feels bad doesn't mean it's bad for you. And when you grieve those relationships changing, disappearing, recognize that it makes room for people to engage with you and for new people to come into your life that are going to align with your highest self, that are going to align with the best version of you. The way they've been engaging has been the way they have been engaging with you has been connected to a lower version of yourself. And that is not the self that we want to be anymore. It's okay to grieve that and to let that go. It's okay to work through those emotions. It's okay to deal with that pain. We don't have to run from it. Jim Rohn has this quote that you'll probably hear me say a million times because I love it so much. Is that we all deal with two pains. Every single person in the world. No one gets to escape pain. Pain is inevitable. Everyone experiences pain. As someone who has tried to avoid pain for so long, I recognize that I never avoided pain. I just dealt with a different kind of pain. So Jim Rohn's quote is, we all deal with two pains. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. So while you think you are avoiding the pain of discipline, avoiding the pain of putting in these boundaries, avoiding the pain of having difficult conversations, avoiding the pain of letting go of some relationships and how they look, or letting go of relationships altogether, while you're avoiding that pain, thinking that that's the worst pain you can possibly have, you're actually living in the pain of regret. You're living in the pain of people pleasing. You're living in the pain of people walking all over you. And what's really important here is that pain of discipline that you've been avoiding because you think it's so horrible. That pain of discipline actually leads to a beautiful, joyous, glorious life. Like, yes, there is pain, but oh my God, is there so much beauty. Oh my God, is there so much beauty when you are able to take the time to take care of yourself, to put your needs, your wants, your desire on the forefront, to stick with whatever it is that you agreed that you were going to do after 9 p.m. to get better sleep, to have less stress, to have less worry, to have more time to read your favorite book, to go for walks, to spend time with your family, to spend time with people who matter most to you. Do you know how beautiful that is? Oh my God. Whew, it's beautiful, and I want it for you so much. All right, so homework for today, because I love doing homework, because this helps you get in the mode of putting what we're talking about into action for change, because that's what I want for you. That's what I want for me. I want us to actually not just listen to this, but actually to learn and to do. And so my people, are you listening? My people, our homework for today, for boundaries, is to identify at least one. I'm not going to tell you how many you need to do, but I need you to identify at least one area which you can set a better boundary with yourself. Because again, the boundaries with yourself have to come before the boundaries you set with others, because you set the tone of how to treat you by how you treat yourself. So identify one area in which you can set a better boundary with yourself, and then set that boundary. Do it. Put it into place. And then I want you to check in with me, post in the comments, and let me know how it's going. Post in the comments right here so that other people can engage with you, other people who are struggling with people pleasing, and myself, so that I can also engage with you and give you some support and some feedback. Again, I'm so happy you are here. My coaching services are always available, and I hope that you have a beautiful day. I love you, my people. Take care. Bye.